I believe that Chicano writers historically are very invested in the quotidian, in the day-to-day lives of real people in real places. So, for example, Ana Castillo with Chicago, Sandra Cisneros with Chicago, and with Texas, many Texas women writers are embracing a sense of place that is part of identity. So when I think of other feminist writers I've worked with, let's say some of the great ones, some Betty Friedan or anybody like that, I think sometimes that a criticism that could be made is that there's an immediate sense of wanting to be a global sisterhood or a global we are all against the man, but then we get away from, but at the same time we have to live a day-to-day life. And for me, Chicano writers in particular are about addressing that day-to-day life as a place of strength to deal with the larger picture. I think one of the most important is the sense of empowerment, that what has to be said is significant, whether it is a poem about watching your grandmother make tortillas or tamales, which is very typical, I think, to stories and fables about the Virgen de Guadalupe. It's about empowerment, but it's also about, I think, a deep looking inside and a connection with both the sense of self, creating an identity that is yours, but also a familiarity and a sense of connection with the family, and for many Chicanos, with the past, all the way to the distant past, 19th century, let's say. And oddly enough, I think that instead of looking inside ourselves as a meditative, philosophical thing, I think frequently in America we're just simply selfish. It's not really about learning about ourselves to become a better part of humanity or to become more connected with that which raised us. It's about I want, I need. So I do think that those voices of introspection for the purpose of looking outward and benefiting something beyond ourselves, I think those are getting lost. Two of the texts that I write about were only published in the 1990s in their full form. And so I think from the 1990s onward, Chicano writers have been looking back at those and recognizing a pattern in their own work that they can now see, gosh, I wonder, how did people make it when everything was so against them, when we had no power, we had no right to vote? And they're looking back at that and they're seeing that their grandmothers and their grandfathers and their great-grandmothers had a community to build out of, and it's part of what made it possible for the new Chicano writers to exist. I grew up in San Antonio, so I grew up in the majority, which is a very different place for your average Mexican-American female in this country. And I'll be frank, until I moved to the University of Iowa to do my graduate studies, I didn't realize there were this many white people in the whole world, because San Antonio is very much a Mexican-American stronghold. You know, I thought of myself as Mexican. My Spanglish was simply what was spoken. And when I moved up there, I was originally going to work on Shakespeare. I thought I would work on French poets. And the culture shock was so great that I really kind of retreated into myself and got introduced to Gloria Anzaldua's Borderlands. And I recognized in myself trying to negotiate two lives. I was very articulate, very good in English, a good scholar, good enough to go to Iowa. But there was also very strange looks at me, not unkind, but simply, who are you, where did you come from? And that reading that book single-handedly led me onto this path, and trying to swim through that book, still to this day, is enlightening. And thankfully for me, I got over the fright. It became definitely something empowering. In the necessity we have of labeling, I think it's easy to say, oh, the Chicana and Chicano movement, that coincided with the Black Power movement. So yeah, it was all about the 60s. And I think as a nation, we're incredibly poor in our history. So I want people to look at it and realize that when they explore in any type of depth the things that they're passionate about, they're going to find connections that they may not expect. And I want them to be open to the joy of finding that, and also the knowledge and introspection that that should bring to you. You really need to think about where we came from and why we're here.